The swamp rescue. The air was heavy with poison. Thick green mist rolling over the swamp like a living thing. Ethan, a lone human explorer, moved carefully across the cracked surface of the alien world. His boots sank into wet ground, his visor flashing warnings of toxic gases. Every breath inside the helmet tasted like iron, yet he pushed forward, guided only by a faint signal his scanner picked up. He did not come here looking for trouble. He only wanted to map the outer swamps for the star charts. Yet trouble always had a way of finding him. The swamp was endless, full of shadows that twisted in the fog. Strange shapes moved beneath the water, waiting for careless steps. One wrong move and a man would never rise again. Then he heard it, a faint cry, almost swallowed by the swamp itself. His first thought was that his helmet picked up a glitch, but when he turned toward the sound, his heart froze. In the distance, through layers of green mist, a figure struggled in the dark water, arms flailing, body sinking deeper. The swamp was pulling her down. Without thinking, Ethan dropped his pack and ran. The ground shook with each step, bubbles rising from the toxic water. He could already see the danger. The swamp gas formed a deadly foam that burned skin. He had no idea who she was or why she was here, but leaving her meant death. And Ethan was not the kind of man who could walk away. He reached the edge of the water and threw himself in. The icy grip of the swamp wrapped around his body like chains. His suit hissed, warning of leaks. He ignored it. His eyes locked on the drowning woman, her face barely above the surface, her lips blue from poison mist, her hair tangled with vines. "Hold on," Ethan shouted, though his voice was muffled inside the helmet. She could not hear him, but he kept moving. He pulled against the swamp, each step sinking deeper. His arms cut through thick water. At last his hand caught her wrist. Cold as stone, she was weak, almost lifeless. He pulled hard, dragging her against his chest. She was light, too light, as if her strength had already left her. With a final push, Ethan carried her back to the solid ground. His boots slipped. His lungs burned, but he refused to let go. At last, he collapsed on the bank with her in his arms, gasping for air inside the suit. Her body lay still, chest rising only a little. Her skin was marked with strange glowing lines, patterns unlike anything it's seen before. They pulsed faintly, dim but alive. It was as if the swamp had tried to claim her, yet something inside her resisted. Ethan quickly opened his emergency kit. He sprayed her with decontamination foam, sealing wounds. The poison burned against her skin, but slowly her breathing grew. Stronger, her eyes fluttered but did not open. He leaned closer, wondering if she would survive. "Who are you?" he whispered, though she could not answer. The swamp hissed around them, bubbles rising. Creatures watching from beneath. Ethan knew they had to move fast. Staying here meant death for both. He lifted her in his arms again, her head resting against his shoulder. She felt fragile. Yet the strange glowing lines on her body hinted at something dangerous. He carried her back to his camp, every step heavy. The swamp tried to drag him down again, but he fought with every ounce of strength. His suit alarm beeped low oxygen, but he did not stop. Finally, after what felt like hours, he reached the small safety dome he had built on the swamp's edge. Inside, the air was clean. The dome lights flickered. He placed the woman on a cot, covering her with thermal sheets. She shivered, then grew still, breathing steady. For a moment, Ethan just stared at her. The swamp outside roared like a living monster, but in here there was silence. He saved her, at least for now. Yet a question burned in his mind. Who was she? Why was she in the deadliest swamp of the galaxy? No ordinary traveler could survive here, and those strange glowing marks on her skin, they looked almost like symbols of war. Ethan shook his head, pushing away the thought. For now she was only a survivor, someone who needed his help. He would keep her safe until she woke. He had no idea that the woman he just pulled from death was no ordinary stranger. She was the warrior of legend, the one whose name carried fear across stars, the one whose return would change everything. But Ethan did not know, not yet. He only knew one thing: he had saved a life tonight, and the swamp had not claimed them both. The strange recovery. The storm outside the dome raged through the night. The swamp howled as if angry that Ethan had stolen one of its victims. Inside the camp it was quiet. Only the soft hum of machines and the shallow breathing of the mysterious woman filled the space. Ethan sat on a crate, helmet off, staring at her with tired eyes. She looked fragile under the light. Her skin was pale, almost silver, marked with those glowing lines that pulsed like veins of fire. Each time they flickered, the monitors in his camp beeped as if detecting a strange energy. Ethan had never seen anything like it in his travels. He wondered if she was even fully human. Hours passed before her eyes opened. They were sharp and bright, not the weak eyes of someone nearly dead. For a moment she looked at him with confusion, then with something colder suspicion. She tried to sit up, but her body trembled. Ethan rushed to stop her, gently pressing her back to the cot. "Easy," he said softly. "You were sinking in the swamp. You need rest." She studied his face as if searching for lies. Her lips moved, her voice dry and rough. "Why did you save me?" she asked. The tone was not of gratitude, but of disbelief. Ethan hesitated. "Because you needed help," he replied. "That's what anyone would do." Her eyes narrowed, as if she knew that was not true. Few would risk their life in that swamp. Her chest rose slowly as she closed her eyes again. Trying to breathe, he noticed how her hands clenched the sheets, as if she was fighting an inner battle. The silence between them grew heavy. Ethan began checking the medical scanner. The device flashed unknown readings, strange energy signatures flowing through her body. His knowledge of alien medicine was limited, yet he knew one thing: this woman carried something inside her. Something dangerous. When she opened her eyes again, she spoke with more strength. "Where am I?" "My camp," Ethan answered. "Safe for now." Her gaze shifted around the small dome, seeing the patched walls, the flickering lights, weapons leaning against the corner. She finally looked back at him. "You are human," she whispered, not as a question, but as a fact. "Yes," he said simply. "And you?" She turned her face away, avoiding the question. "I am no one," she muttered. Her voice was cold, but her trembling hands betrayed her. Ethan leaned back, watching her carefully. She was hiding something. He felt it in the way she refused to meet his eyes, in the way her glowing marks seemed to burn brighter when he asked about her. He wanted to press further, but he also knew trust could not be forced. The night grew long. Ethan worked on repairing his oxygen filters while keeping one eye on her. At times she stirred, muttering words in a language he did not know. At times her body shook as if fighting invisible chains. The glowing marks flared, then dimmed again. At dawn, she tried to stand. Her body swayed, but she refused to fall. Ethan caught her arm to steady her. She looked at him sharply, pulling away as if his touch burned her. Yet in her eyes there was a flicker of something else: fear, not of him, but of herself. "You should rest," Ethan said. "You're still weak." "I am never weak," she snapped, her voice suddenly strong. But then her knees bent, and she nearly collapsed. Ethan grabbed her again, holding her up. This time she did not resist, only looked at him with silent frustration. "Whoever you are," Ethan said gently, "you don't have to pretend." Her lips parted as if to argue, but no words came. She finally sank back onto the cot. Her eyes stared at the ceiling, distant, lost. For a long moment neither spoke. The swamp outside bubbled and hissed, creatures howling in the mist. Inside the dome, Ethan felt a strange tension. He had rescued her, yet he was the one feeling watched, as if she was studying his every move. Finally she whispered, almost too soft to hear, "You don't understand. By saving me, you may have doomed yourself." Ethan frowned, but before he could ask, she closed her eyes again, refusing to speak further. He sat back, unease curling in his chest. He had thought he saved a stranger, but something told him he had pulled far more from that swamp. Something dangerous, something the galaxy itself might be searching for. And yet, As he looked at her broken, but unyielding, he could not bring himself to regret it, not yet. Signs of power days passed slowly in the swamp camp. Ethan worked on repairing his damaged equipment, checking the perimeter shields, and keeping the fire burning inside the dome. The swamp outside was never quiet. Strange sounds drifted through. The mist, roars of hidden creatures, the bubbling of poison lakes, and the whispers of things that moved without shape. The woman, who still refused to give her name, remained silent most of the time. She watched Ethan work, her sharp eyes following every detail. She moved with caution, her steps light, but there was something about her that did not fit with her fragile state. Ethan noticed it whenever she thought he was not looking. Her posture was too steady, her movements too controlled. Like a soldier hiding in the skin of a survivor. On the third morning, the swamp itself attacked. A massive beast rose from the murky waters near the camp, its body covered in scales of stone, its jaws wide enough to crush metal. The swamp shook. Under its weight, Ethan grabbed his plasma rifle and fired. Blue bolts tore across the mist, striking the creature's chest, but the beast only roared, its hide too thick. The woman stood behind him, still wrapped in the thermal cloak. Ethan shouted, "Stay back!" As he fired again, the rifle hissed, overheating. The beast lunged, slamming against the shield wall. Sparks flew. The dome's defenses would not hold long. Ethan felt his chest tighten. This was the end, but then he saw it. For only a second. The woman's eyes glowed with light. She stepped forward, her hand rising as if by instinct. Ethan barely noticed at first, then the beast staggered. It was as if an invisible force struck it. The swamp water exploded around its legs. The creature roared again, pulling back as if struck by a giant blade. Ethan blinked in shock, lowering his rifle. The woman quickly turned away, her cloak hiding her hands, her face calm, too calm. "It's leaving," she said flatly, and indeed the beast sank back into the swamp. Vanishing into the mist, Ethan's heart raced. He knew what he saw. She had done something beyond human. Yet when he tried to ask, she only shook her head. It was nothing. The swamp beasts sometimes retreat if wounded. But Ethan was not a fool. He had traveled through half the galaxy. He had fought pirates, mercenaries, even alien soldiers. He knew power when he saw it, and the woman hiding in his camp carried it in her bones. Later that night, while she slept, Ethan sat by the fire, staring at her. The glowing marks on her skin pulsed faintly beneath the cloak, every time they lit up. The camp's instruments spiked with energy readings. Ethan wondered if she was dangerous, or if she was running from something worse. The next day they set out together. Ethan's scanners picked up traces of metal ruins deeper in the swamp. He needed resources to repair his ship. The woman insisted on coming. Her strength seemed to return quickly, too quickly. She moved across the swamp like she had walked it 1,000 times before, her eyes scanning the mist with the precision of a hunter. As they moved, Ethan began to notice more signs. When a patch of poisonous gas erupted from the ground, she stepped aside a heartbeat before it appeared. When an insect the size of a dog leapt from the trees, she struck it with a sharpened stick, her movement so fast Ethan barely saw it. The insect fell dead, split cleanly in two. Ethan froze, staring at her. She looked back at him with an unreadable expression. "Survival teaches speed," she said simply. Then she kept walking, leaving him in silence. The swamp grew denser, and ruins of old structures appeared half buried in mud. Towers of broken stone, symbols carved in languages Ethan did not know. The woman touched the walls as if she remembered them. For a moment her eyes softened, almost sad. Ethan wanted to ask, but he stayed quiet. As night fell, they camped under the shadow of the ruins. The fire crackled, insects hissed in the darkness. Ethan finally spoke. "You are not who you say you are." She looked at him, her face lit by the flames. For a long moment she said nothing. Then she smiled faintly, but it was not a smile of joy. "And you are too curious for your own good," she replied. Her voice carried weight, As if warning him, Ethan leaned back, staring into the fire. His instincts screamed that he had stepped into something far larger than himself. Yet part of him could not stop. He had saved her life. And now he wanted to know why she was here, and what she truly was. As the night deepened, she whispered words in that strange language again. The glowing lines on her skin flared brighter. Ethan pretended to sleep, but he watched from the corner of his eye. She was not weak, she was not broken, she was something else. Something dangerous, and in that moment, Ethan realized a truth that chilled his blood. He had not rescued a stranger. He had rescued a secret powerful enough to change the fate of worlds. The hunt begins. The swamp never slept. Even when the skies turned dark and the two moons rose above the mist, strange sounds echoed across the wetlands. Ethan and the woman, who still refused to give her true name, sat by the ruins. They had found. The firelight flickered against broken walls, shadows dancing like ghosts of an old war. Ethan could not shake the feeling that they were being watched. His hand never left his plasma rifle. His instincts, sharpened by years of wandering dangerous worlds, screamed of danger nearby. The woman seemed calm, too calm. Her eyes moved across the fog as if she could see what hid inside. The truth came the next morning. Distant engines rumbled through the swamp air. Heavy boots splashed through poison water. Ethan crouched low behind a broken pillar. He saw the mercenaries, armored in black, their masks glowing red. They carried shock spears and heavy rifles, not scavengers, not explorers. They were hunters. At the front marched a tall alien with pale blue skin and a scar across his throat. His voice boomed like thunder. Search every ruin, she is here. The fabled one cannot hide forever. Ethan's breath caught. He turned to the woman, her jaw clenched, her eyes dark. She did not look surprised. Instead she whispered, "They have found me." Ethan stared. They are looking for you." She gave no answer, but her silence spoke louder than words. The mercenaries spread out, scanning the swamp with energy trackers. Ethan knew their dome would not stay hidden for long. He grabbed her arm, whispering, "We have to move now." But she pulled her arm back, her gaze fixed on the hunters. For a heartbeat, Ethan thought she would step into the open, face them alone. But then her body shook and she whispered, "Not yet. I am not ready." They slipped deeper into the ruins, moving quietly between broken walls. Ethan guided her through collapsed tunnels and swamp-covered passages. Each step felt heavier as the sound of hunters grew closer. Dogs made of steel and bones sniffed, the ground growling. Ethan's pulse pounded. As they hid, Ethan finally asked, "Who are you really?" Her eyes met his, glowing faintly under the shadow. "Someone who should have died in that swamp," she said coldly, "and someone they fear. If they catch me, you will die too." Ethan gritted his teeth. "Then I'll fight. I'm not leaving you." She looked at him as if he was mad, yet something in her eyes softened for the first time. "You are human," she whispered. Strange creatures, always ready to bleed for others. The mercenaries grew closer. Their leader shouted, "Bring me her alive or I will burn this swamp to the ground." His soldiers roared in reply. Ethan knew they could not keep running. The ruins were too open, too many hunters. He scanned their surroundings, his mind racing. He could set traps, use the ruins for cover, maybe buy them time. But against so many armored killers, survival was slim. The woman suddenly touched his shoulder, her hand cold but steady. "If they find us, you must leave me. Do not fight for me. I am not worth your death." Ethan shook his head. "I didn't drag you out of that swamp just to hand you back to them." For a moment silence fell between them, broken only by the hiss of swamp gas and the growl of hunting beasts. She looked at him with something almost like respect, but also sorrow, as if she already knew how this would end. The mercenaries entered the ruins, weapons raised. Scanning every shadow, Ethan aimed his rifle, finger tight on the trigger. He could feel the woman tense beside him. Her glowing marks pulsed faintly, as if her body was calling for war. Yet she held it back, biting her lip, forcing herself to remain still. Ethan did not understand why she hid her strength, but he saw the truth. She was powerful, maybe unstoppable, but something inside her chained that power. As the hunters closed in, Ethan whispered, "Then tell me your name at least, if we're going to fight. I want to know who I stand with." Her eyes burned with light, her voice a low whisper. "Lyra." The name cut through the mist like a blade. Ethan repeated it in his mind, Lyra. A name that felt older than the ruins themselves. The mercenaries drew nearer. Their leader's voice thundered. "The warrior is close. I can feel her, spread out, no mistakes." Ethan tightened his grip on the rifle. Lyra's hand brushed the wall, the glowing symbols on her skin matching the carvings on the stone. For a moment, the ruins themselves seemed to breathe with her. And in that moment, Ethan understood. This was not just a woman he saved. This was someone tied to legends. Someone worth an army's hunt. Someone who carried the power of history itself. But the mercenaries were here now, and choices had run out. The hunt had truly begun. Revelation in battle. The ruins shook with the sound of heavy boots. The mercenaries moved like wolves through the mist, red visors glowing, weapons raised. Ethan crouched low behind a broken wall. Lyra beside him, her breathing was steady too. Steady for someone being hunted. Ethan gripped his rifle tighter. His heart pounded. He had faced pirates before, raiders, even soldiers of empires. But this was different. They were not here for plunder. They were here for her, Lyra. And they would burn the swamp to ashes to claim her. The mercenary leader raised his hand, his voice cut through the fog. "Find her, kill the human if you must, but bring me the warrior alive." Ethan felt the weight of those words. He turned to Lyra, whispering, "Warrior, they called you the warrior." Her jaw tightened. She gave no answer, only stared at the ground as if fighting a storm inside her chest. The mercenaries closed in. Metal hounds sniffed the air. Growling, one turned its steel head toward their hiding place. A low growl rumbled. In its throat, Ethan aimed his rifle. Finger trembling, he whispered, "When I fire, we run." But Lyra did not move. Her eyes burned brighter, her glowing marks flared. For a heartbeat, Ethan saw something in her power held back by chains of will. The hound lunged. Ethan fired. Blue plasma cut through the fog. The beast shattered, sparks flying. The mercenary shouted, "They're the human." Bullets and beams rained down on the ruins. The ground exploded, shards of stone flying. Ethan dragged Lyra behind cover. His rifle whined as it overheated. He cursed under his breath. "We can't hold them." The mercenaries charged, their heavy steps shaking the ground. Ethan pulled his knife, ready for close fight. He knew he would die here, but he would not surrender. Then it happened. Lyra stood, her cloak falling away. The glowing lines across her skin blazed like fire. Her eyes turned to pure light. For a moment, even the mercenaries froze, staring at her as if they had seen a ghost. The leader roared, "It's her. The fabled one, take her." But Lyra moved first, faster than the human eye could follow. Her hand rose, and the ruins themselves seemed to answer. Stones cracked, air shivered. A blast of raw energy threw mercenaries across the swamp. Ethan fell back, stunned. He had seen soldiers with weapons. He had seen machines with devastating power. But this was alive. Power flowing from her body like a storm unleashed. She leapt into the fray, her movements precise, graceful, deadly. A mercenary swung his shock spear, but she caught it with bare hands, snapping it like glass. Another raised his rifle. She twisted, her strike breaking his armor. She fought like someone who had been born for battle. A living legend. Ethan could only watch, half terrified, half in awe. The fragile woman he pulled from the swamp was no victim. She was a warrior, a force of nature. The mercenary leader charged her, swinging a massive blade. Sparks flew as steel met the energy glowing from her arms. She pushed him back with a single strike, sending him crashing into a wall. His armor cracked, his visor shattered. He looked up at her with fear, whispering, "The prophecy is true." Lyra stood over him. her chest rising with fire, her eyes glowed brighter than the moon's. She whispered words Ethan could not understand, but the swamp seemed to listen. The mist swirled, the ruins trembled, the mercenaries faltered, fear spreading through their ranks. Ethan forced himself to move, firing at those who tried to flank her. He was no match for her power, but he would not let her fight alone. His shots cut down 2 mercenaries, buying her space. The battle ended as suddenly as it began. The ground was littered with broken weapons and unconscious soldiers. The few survivors fled into the swamp, dragging their wounded. The leader crawled away, fear in his eyes, shouting to his men, "She has returned." The warrior lives. Silence fell. Only the crackle of fire and the hiss of swamp gas remained. Ethan lowered his rifle, his arms shaking. He looked at Lyra, her glowing marks dimmed slowly, her breathing heavy. She stood in the ruins, a figure of power and sorrow. For the first time since he saved her, she looked at him without walls in her eyes. "You wanted the truth," she whispered, her voice both strong and broken. "Now you have seen it." Ethan's mouth was dry. His voice came rough. "You're not just a survivor." Lyra's gaze dropped. Her hands trembled. "I am the fabled warrior of my people, once betrayed, left to die in the swamp, but fate brought you to me." She looked at him again. "And now you are tied to my war." Ethan's heart pounded. He had only wanted to chart the swamp, but now he stood beside a legend, a warrior whispered about, in fear and hope, and for the first time, he wondered if saving her was not just an act of kindness, but the beginning of something far greater. The burden of a warrior. The swamp was silent after the battle. Bodies of fallen mercenaries lay half buried in the mud, their weapons broken. The air heavy with smoke and poison mist. Ethan leaned against the ruined wall, his rifle loose in his hands. His heart still raced from the fight, but his eyes stayed fixed on Lyra. She stood in the center of the ruins, her glowing marks fading slowly back into dim light. Her shoulders rose and fell with deep breaths. The fire in her eyes dimmed, leaving only exhaustion. For the first time, Ethan saw her look less like a warrior and more like someone carrying a weight too heavy to bear. She sank to her knees, pressing her hands against the broken stones. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "They will never stop. They will keep hunting me until the stars themselves burn out." Ethan approached carefully, kneeling beside her. "Then tell me why. Tell me what you're carrying." Lyra closed her eyes. The ruins around them seemed to hum, as if waiting for her words. At last she spoke, her voice steady but filled with sorrow. "I was born into a people who believed in strength above all. My bloodline was chosen, destined. They called me the fabled warrior, the one who would unite the clans and lead them against the empire that enslaved us." Her hands clenched, glowing faintly. "But when I rose, when I trained, when I proved stronger than the elders themselves, they feared me. The empire whispered promises into their ears, and my own people betrayed me. They left me in the swamp, poisoned, chained, believing I would die. My name turned from prophecy to curse." Ethan's chest tightened. He understood betrayal. He had seen it in wars across the stars. Yet hearing it in her voice struck deeper. Lyra looked at him, her eyes burning even without the glow. "And then you came, a human with no reason, no duty. You dragged me out of death. Why?" Ethan hesitated. He searched for words, but in the end he only shrugged lightly. "Because you were there. Because I could not watch someone sink while I stood safe." For a moment silence hung between them. Her lips curved into the faintest shadow of a smile. "Humans," she whispered, "always bleeding for strangers, always carrying burdens that are not yours." Ethan smiled tiredly. "Maybe, but sometimes that's what keeps us alive." Lyra turned her gaze back to the ruins. Her voice dropped lower. "Now the clans will know I live. The mercenaries will spread word. The empire will move to crush me before I rise again. And you," her voice broke slightly, "you will be hunted for standing with me." Ethan shook his head. "Then let them come. I've been hunted before." I'm still here. Lyra studied him, her eyes searching his face. For the first time she let the wall of steel in her expression break. Beneath it was pain, fear, and something else, hope. I was ready to die in that swamp, she admitted. It was easier than facing the destiny I never wanted, but you would not let me die. You pulled me back into this fight. Do you understand? What that means, Ethan met her gaze. It means you're not alone anymore. Her breath caught. She looked away quickly, hiding the emotion in her eyes. Do not speak so easily, human. This path leads only to blood and ashes. Then, I'll walk it with you, Ethan said quietly. The ruins fell silent. Only the swamp's distant growls filled the air. Lyra closed her eyes. Her hand brushing over the glowing lines on her arm, she whispered something in her ancient tongue. Ethan did not understand the words, but he felt the meaning. It was a vow, a promise, a curse, all in one. When she opened her eyes again, they glimmered with both fire and sadness. Very well, Ethan, if fate has bound you to me, then you will see the truth of this galaxy. You will see the burden of the warrior. Ethan exhaled slowly. He knew his life had already changed the moment he pulled her from the swamp. But now it was no longer a rescue, it was a bond. Lyra stood, straightening her back though her body still trembled from battle. We move at dawn. The clans must know I live, and the Empire must fear it. She looked at him one last time, her voice softer, almost fragile. Do not regret saving me, human, even if it costs you everything. Ethan met her gaze without flinching. I won't. The swamp hissed around them, as if listening. The night stretched long and heavy. And in that moment, Ethan realized the truth. He had not just saved a woman from drowning. He had saved a legend from extinction, and legends carried the heaviest burdens of all. Destiny shared. The swamp was quiet at dawn. A heavy mist clung to the ruins, glowing faintly under the pale light of two suns rising in the distance. Ethan packed what little he had, his hands moving quickly but his thoughts restless. The night's words still echoed in his mind. Lyra's confession, her burden, her warning. She stood at the edge of the camp, her cloak wrapped tight. Her glowing marks were dim now, like embers waiting for fire. She looked across the swamp as if she could already see the path ahead. A road paved with blood and war. Ethan joined her. We move, he said simply. She gave a small nod, but her eyes stayed on the horizon. They walked for hours, leaving the ruins behind. The swamp shifted around them, bubbling with hidden threats. Ethan kept his rifle ready, but he noticed something. Creatures seemed to avoid them now, as if sensing the power that traveled with Lyra. The mist itself seemed to open before her steps. By midday, they reached a ridge where the swamp ended. Beyond it stretched rolling plains and dark mountains. Somewhere past those peaks the clans lived, scattered tribes bound by history and fear. Somewhere in those lands the Empire had stretched its claws. Ethan stared at the sight. So that's where your war begins? Lyra's eyes hardened. No, Ethan, that is where it continues. My war began the moment I was born. It never ended, not even when they left me to die in the swamp. Ethan glanced at her. And now it's mine too. She turned to him, her face unreadable. You do not have to carry this, human. Your kind does not belong in this fight. You could leave now, disappear into the stars, live free. Ethan smirked faintly, though his voice was steady. Maybe. But freedom means nothing if I abandon the one I saved. You said fate tied me to you. Well, then I'll see it through, whatever comes. For the first time her expression softened. She looked at him not as a stranger, not even as a rescuer, but as something more. Her lips parted as if to argue, but no words came. Instead she turned back to the horizon, her silence carrying. Wait. They camped that night near the plains. Ethan worked on the fire while Lyra sat in silence, staring at the flames. The glow lit her face. Half warrior, half wounded soul. She finally spoke. Do you know why they call me Fabled, Ethan? Because they believe I will unite what was broken, bring strength enough to shake empires. But I never asked for this. I never wanted to be a symbol. I only wanted to live free. Ethan poked the fire, sparks flying upward. Maybe symbols are not chosen. Maybe they're made by what we survive. You lived when they thought you would die. You rose when they tried to bury you. That makes you more than a symbol. That makes you real. Her eyes shimmered with something unspoken. And what of you, human? What fate do you carry? Ethan shrugged lightly. I had none until the swamp gave me you. Silence stretched. Warm and heavy, the fire cracked. The night sang with alien winds. For a moment they were no longer warrior and wanderer, but two souls bound by chance. The next morning they crossed the plains. The sky widened, the mist of the swamp far behind, and as they walked, Ethan realized something. He was not following her, and she was not leading him. They walked side by side, step for step, as if the path belonged to them both by the time. The mountains loomed. Lyra stopped. Her cloak fell back, her glowing marks burning bright once more. She turned to him, her voice firm, steady. When we pass beyond these peaks, there will be no return. The clans will rise, the empire will strike, the galaxy will know I live. And you, Ethan, will no longer be nameless. You will be tied to my legend forever. Ethan met her gaze without fear. Then let the galaxy remember. A human pulled a warrior from the swamp, and together they walked into destiny. Her eyes softened, her lips curved into the faintest trace of a smile. For the first time, she looked at him not with sorrow, not with warning, but with something like trust. They turned toward the mountains. The wind howled as if announcing their arrival. The sun burned through the mist, casting light across their path, and in that light, two figures walked, one human, one legend, bound by fate. The galaxy would remember them. It would remember the day a human reached into the deadly swamp and pulled out not just a woman, but a warrior, and together they would change everything.